Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Friday's edition of the Friday App Clinic. Today we're looking at finance apps. My name's Reto.
I'm Ian.
And hopefully we're going to be able to provide some advice as to how you can take your finance app and make it all the better.
And in honor of Finance App Week, instead of beer, today we're drinking Hendrick's Dry Martinis.
Very nice. Keeping it classy.
2 olives and a Spanish caper.
Wow. Taking notes at home, I hope.
Indeed.
So I tried to find the richest person I knew, and the closest I could come was Ian, who does drive a BMW.
That's true, my wife bought it.
Nice, that'll work.
Which makes me rich in 2 ways.
Oh. Aww. I hope she's watching at home so that you get full credit for that.
Of course she's not watching at home. She'd be watching at work.
That would make a lot more sense.
Exactly. So, right, we took a look at several financial apps that were, of course, suggested by viewers. Now, we weren't able to look at all of them, and part of the reason is that financial apps, by their very nature, can ask for some sensitive information, and neither one of us were comfortable giving our bank accounts to a third party.
This is true.
Which, actually, when you think about it, is a little silly, maybe.
Possibly. Certainly some of the apps, I think Mint in particular was one app which has gotten huge reviews. It's an editor's choice. It's by all accounts very trustworthy and a very high quality app. So in a way, I felt like people have already looked at this and said how great it is, so we can probably skip it.
In point of fact, we have already looked at it and worked closely with that team. We love it. I've seen it in beta. But yeah, I didn't, it's not so much I didn't want to trust Mint with my credentials, I just didn't want to show everybody my financial statements on air.
That's a fair call.
Yeah, the sheer amount of beer budget, I think, would have really boggled people's minds.
Yeah, well, you don't want to shock anyone too dramatically. So yes, that makes sense. Sadly, neither of us has a Cayman Islands account that we can use to just, demonstrate how it would work. So you'll have to try that yourselves at home.
But what we do have is brand new microphones and a couple new cameras today. So before we get into it, we just want to show stuff off. We're on the new microphones, which are high quality microphones, as opposed to the ones that we got on like an Amazon or Overstock sale for like $400 for 4 of them. Actually, it's $400 for 8 now that I think about it.
This is good news for the local karaoke team, who will really enjoy being able to use those mics.
Exactly. So if you have any comments about the sound quality, just keep them to yourself today. We don't want to hear it. No, just kidding. So Daniel Pham, our engineer, is looking out for sound quality. But if he misses anything, just let us know. Speaking of Daniel Pham, let's switch over to the engineer cam.
Woo! Which I don't have on yet.
Engineer cam.
Later, guys.
Later, guys. All right. No engineer cam quite yet. No, I saw it move.
We got it.
You can see engineer cam right there. Boom.
Hey, guys.
Oh, wow. That's right. We moved the lights after we set up the engineer cam.
Right in my face. So I'm going to move over.
Nice.
Yeah, perfect. So we have the sun in the studio now, so we're hoping to get some better light quality as well.
Indeed. Although I think we are still getting this.
No, I don't know.
It's okay. Okay, all right, it's all right. All right.
Okay, so let's
move on.
Let's get slightly less meta and have a look at some apps. So we've got a few. What we're going to try and get through as many of these as we can, and they represent quite a varied, a large variation in app types. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think we talked about financial apps, and I think that our viewers took that a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
Everything from AppSale to IOU to Fat Mole Free.
Exactly.
Which I noticed that you haven't installed. Maybe you didn't realize that it's all about managing your finances. It's just sort of a metaphor.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I did see the game and I thought, this is a game. Why?
Well, you think of it as a game. In the same way that life is a game.
Yeah. In fact, it's disappointing that no one's nominated the game of life, because that, I guess, would have been an interesting opportunity.
Indeed. So why don't we take a short look at app sales?
Absolutely.
This is, I guess it's financial in a way, but not quite the way we were thinking.
It's about saving money, I suppose, rather than managing your finances, which is totally legitimate.
So this is kind of an interesting, we think that it might skirt the line on Google Play Store policies. So, but what it does is it tracks the prices of apps on the Google Play Store, so that you can be notified if something goes on sale.
Very nice. So it has a nice UI, fairly straightforward, using an action bar. It's not actually an action bar. It's more of a pseudo action bar, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of this, Reto. We're seeing a lot of fake action bars. Why do you think that is?
Probably because there's no framework way of being able to have action bars for devices running older versions of Android. Well, I think the current thinking has been to use a third-party library, something like Action Bar Shell, which does provide something which is very authentic and gives you that ability. That said, I think what's happening in this app here is totally legitimate. It is an app, it is an action bar. It works the way that you would expect it to. The only feedback I'd give in this particular instance is to be careful about the icons, the style of the icons that you're using. And so in this case, they're using they've themed the icons so that they are sort of faded into the action bar itself. It's an interesting approach, but that's immediately what makes it obvious that this isn't a standard action bar. So I would have a look at the design site and stick to the design guidelines in terms of your icons.
Right, and this is, I think, what we've said over and over is that if you have a great design idea that doesn't fit into our design guidelines, by all means use it. But if you're trying to mimic something that the Android design guidelines already cover, and it looks enough like a standard Android feature that people might think it is, then don't make it work differently, and preferably don't make it look particularly differently.
Exactly. I think that's the key here. Is like if you want to do something radically different, then that's a fantastic idea. We love to see really innovative designs, but if you're doing something which which looks like an action bar or any other sort of system element, it should behave the same way, and it should look as close to it as possible so that you're not sort of getting thrown.
Right. Now, speaking of icons, I think that's actually my biggest concern about this app, because I should say right off the top, I love this app. I love the fact that this app exists. I love the idea behind it. But there's one thing that I am concerned about, and that is that the app is using these icons which represent each of the applications. Now, those applications have uploaded icons to the Google Play Store and given Google permission to use that artwork. And that artwork does actually belong to the people who have created the applications.
That's very true.
So to the people who made app sales, the one thing that I would want to be sure of, and of course I have no idea, but in general, you want to make sure that you have negotiated the rights to these icons before you use them, because you don't necessarily have permission to use them in this context.
That's right, and in this instance, I imagine it's not going to be too hard to get that approval if you're able to reach out, because you're basically helping people to sell their apps when they've got them on sale, so it's free advertising, but as Ian says, just because it is definitely useful for them doesn't mean that you automatically get the right to use them.
Yep.
The other thing which I'm going to look at, I'm not actually going to click it because then I will have seen something which can't be unseen. But it implies here that perhaps this is going to link me to something which is not downloadable from the Google Play Store, which would be a violation of the content policies, which says that you can't link to an external app store. If you want to have app downloads, it's got to be through Google Play. So I'm not going to click it, and that way I won't know. But if the developer of App Sales is out there, I would definitely look carefully at that and make sure you're not violating any of our policies.
Exactly. Okay, so I think that's all we need to say
I think
about
that's
App Sales.
all we need to say.
It's a really cool idea.
Definitely.
Definitely, need to maybe just take care because anytime you get into app information at all, there's a bunch of twiddly little legal and policy issues that you really need to take care of.
Absolutely. It's a great idea. And as an engineer, I think we can all get on board. It's the sort of thing where you think, hey, this would be really cool. An app which tracks what apps are for sale would be really useful, and it is. But then, sadly, the legal policy stuff gets in the way, and you kind of have to, do your due diligence, find out what you can and can't do.
Yeah, you know what else would be awesome?
What's that?
It's just a site where I could go and just find free movies. And then I would just download them, and I would download them really fast.
That would be useful, yes.
Exactly.
But possibly also some legal implications there.
Not everything we want to have happen is legal in today's world. Contact your representatives.
Exactly.
So should we go to timesheet?
Let's check out timesheets. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Let's fire it up here on the... As you can probably see, we have one of our new cameras is giving us a different view of the phone cam. So hopefully this is easier for everyone to see at home, and with 90 to 100% fewer reflections.
Yes.
So this is kind of an interesting app. Those of you who like me has done contract work in the past, or run your own business, then the idea of having to keep timesheets is as familiar as it is frustrating.
You know, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I actually had a dream 2 nights ago where you were chasing me around trying to make me fill out a timesheet. And then you explained that all time spent on personal calls could not be included in my Google Workday.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like something I would do.
I need to see somebody.
You do need to see someone.
Yeah.
I think maybe next week we can have self-help apps. That
Indeed.
might help you out.
All right.
So looking at the app straight away, what I found kind of interesting about this was that it wasn't the navigation, I guess, was the problem. To put it in a nutshell, the look and feel is great. You've got the action bar along the top, using standard icons. You know exactly what's going on. So the first time I I kind of like this tip
Yeah, it's
here
a
where
little
they're saying,
whimsical. I like it. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's in a nice sort of cursive font, sort of giving you a hint as to what's going on. So once you've got things set up, that's fair enough. So we are in the app clinic, so I should start working.
Right.
Still working on a task, so you can stop working, have a break, all these sorts of things. It does actually stick it into your ongoing notifications, so you can continue doing other work.
Oh, that's very cool.
And you're notified when that's happening.
Hang on just a second. Break. Okay, let's continue.
Let's continue. Perfect. Now, interestingly, we have to now put in details
Did I
around
enjoy
the break.
the break? I did actually.
Yes.
It was quite refreshing.
Absolutely. And save. So this is interesting. So again, here we have an interesting workflow dynamic where we're asked to save the description for the break that we're editing.
Right.
Now, given the way that this worked, as in I finished my break and then straight away we were dumped into this edit break, there is really no circumstance here where I wouldn't want to save what I've done.
Right.
So you can probably get rid of your save icon and the trash icon and just basically allow you to hit back or hit up.
Yeah, and there's really
be
two
done.
problems here, because even if you did determine through, let's say, extensive user experience testing that having a save button and a cancel button was the right thing to do, there are common icons for that. There's a little checkbox meaning done, which implies saving, and there's an X meaning cancel. So the little disk icon, although I do realize that the floppy disk is a universal save symbol, we don't use it on Android. We have our own set of icons. You should always use the system icons wherever possible, because that will help not only help your app be understandable to users, but help the entire ecosystem be learnable.
Indeed, and one of the benefits you get from using those system icons as well is that everything will be sized and shaped the same way and in the same style. And so you're looking at this, what I know to be a trash icon because I'm expecting it to be a trash icon, but could just as easily be a birthday present.
Or a spaghetti pot.
Or a spaghetti pot. Yeah, that's better actually, with a slightly oversized lid. Yeah. So, you don't want users to have to try and interpret what your glyphs are. You just want it to be straightforward, and you want to get rid of them wherever you can. So
What's on the overflow menu?
I was wondering about that myself.
Okay.
Settings
You know what?
back up to
I like having settings on the overflow menu, and I personally, I don't think that everybody agrees with me on this. It's not a requirement. I personally like having settings be pretty much accessible everywhere.
I kind of agree. I think if you've got sort of these universal application things like settings backup and the support page, if you have them anywhere, you may as well have them everywhere. I think that makes it easy. You don't want to have to navigate your app to figure out where you can get to settings. I think that's reasonable.
But now let's see what happens. Okay, so
cancelled.
Okay, so once again, we had 4 ways of leaving that particular activity. One was the up affordance, the other one was the back key. Are we calling it the back affordance now?
I think just the back key.
I'm not really sure what affordance even means, but it
that's
makes
why
me
I'm
sound really smart.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
So the up affordance, the vertical y-axis positive affordance, took us back. The back key, I would assume, probably would also take us
assume
back.
it does the same thing.
And then you've also got the done and cancel or save and cancel. So 4 ways to exit that activity.
Yeah.
Not all of which were self-explanatory.
No, and all but one will actually cancel what you were doing, which
is
seems
weird,
counterintuitive.
right?
And now, to be honest, I'm a little stuck now because I took a break, I ended the break, and then I had to describe the break, but then I cancelled.
Didn't feel like describing the break, so I left.
But now, did I not take a break? Or do I just not have the break described? I'm not sure.
I think it depends on whether this app has the power to manipulate time.
Do you feel like you've had a break?
No, I should probably have another break.
Yeah.
All right, break's over. Back to work.
Okay. So now I'm going to hit save this time.
Okay.
So that we go back. Break successfully saved. So again, this is something which we talked about last week, and something that we've discussed internally as a team, is this notion of using toasts to inform people when things happen. And my feeling is this is kind of a developer hack.
Yeah.
It's the way that you say, hey, I'm not entirely convinced that my code does what I expect it to. So every time I'm going to do something, I'm going to pop up a notification telling me, so that when I hit save, I know that my service has in fact kicked off and saved it in the background.
Yeah, I mean, when you put a toast in, you're basically saying, I have something to say, but it is completely unimportant.
Exactly.
Because if you miss it, I don't care.
So what you really want to be doing here is having the faith in your own app. So by all means, have toasts in the same way that you have log statements, so that when you're doing your own testing, when you're figuring out whether your workflows all work and you're pressing the backs and the ups and confirming what does what, that makes total sense. But before you ship, you should probably be able to move pretty much all your toasts.
Most of them. I mean, there certainly are times when I appreciate a toast or two.
Sure. First thing in the morning, after a late night,
Indeed.
with a soft-boiled egg.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, poached usually.
Yeah, no, that's nice.
Right.
Yeah.
But in this case, I don't know. One of the main issues that I have is that this particular toast was telling me that something that I'd been working on was rejected because I happened to hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
And in that case, to me, that's not toast worthy. That's more of a flashing, drudge report light saying, something has gone seriously wrong. But that's just me. I mean, I don't know. The main question is, did I still take that break? How would we find out?
Well, I don't know. Let's have a look. So I'm looking at this. I'm going to go ahead and assume that that what we have down the bottom here is some sort of report. That's not telling me much. So I'm going to drop that back down.
All right. Well, what if we stop working? Would we be able to?
Let's stop working.
Okay. All right. Good.
All right. So now it's asking us, what work have you done? Yeah, it's a fair question. Let's just do that, because I have the suspicion that if I hit back or up or anything other than
afraid.
save, then it's going to lose the work that I've done. So we should have about 6 minutes of work there. We hit save, we go in, task save. So we've got, let's have a look on breaks. So indeed, both breaks of minus a minute. I think maybe it can manipulate time. Oh,
that can't possibly mean negative.
I think what it's saying is that, so this is essentially like double accounting. So this is minus a minute in that it's a minute away from the total amount of time that we've spent.
Right.
So this makes sense, but in the way that it's described here, it's kind of backwards. So I understand from your accounting perspective that it represents a negative number, but in terms of breaks, I'm looking at this going, how am I spending minus time on a break? So you should probably make sure that everything is in the correct, orientation, I guess, for
what if we
what
just
you're doing.
say, detail? Well, yeah. See, you're right that it's very similar to double column accounting, but the thing that makes double column accounting understandable is that there are, in fact, two columns.
Yeah,
right.
That's kind of the key. So you can only really, it makes it appropriate if you have sort of your work time and your breaks next to each other. Then it makes sense. If not, as in here, it kind of doesn't.
Yeah, indeed.
No expenses, no rules, details, etc. So I think the key piece of information from what we've looked at here is really that you want to make it obvious to the user what their actions are going to do. So in this case, even though we hit cancel and it said that the action which we had tried to perform had been cancelled, it hadn't been, right? It's still here. We still have the break, which is frankly what the user wants and expects, and so we're glad that it behaves this way. But don't tell me that it's cancelled if it's not cancelled.
Right.
Really all you're saying here is you didn't put in a description. And frankly, the use case where you're going to want to go in there and type something and then not keep whatever you've typed is pretty close to zero, right?
Yeah, well, especially if you have the ability to edit it afterwards.
Precisely.
Right?
So you can always change it. So really, in that case, there should only be one thing you can do there, which is basically edit that break, which is exactly what you're doing. So you want to edit it and then return back to where you were. So you don't need to confirm save, you don't need to cancel, you don't need to do anything other than be able to exit back. So it should really just, everything should take you back one step and successfully save.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other thing, so if we...
I wouldn't mind also the ability to, if I'm going to keep track of breaks like that,
Sure.
and if I actually want to fill in details, which, by the way, I don't. I am so glad that I don't work on a job that where that is even remotely necessary. But
true.
if I did, I probably wouldn't want to type. I mean, what do I do? Like, I went to get coffee, go to the bathroom, go smoke, buy drugs, any of these things.
Like more cigarettes, of course.
This is the state of California.
That's very true.
Point is, I have a limited number of things. I would like to have some defaults.
Absolutely. Yeah, defaults would be nice. It would be good if it remembers the sorts of things that you do in your break, or even the work tasks.
Oh, that
so
would
you
be
can select
ideal.
from that list, right?
Right, because it could just say, at 9 a.m. I always have my coffee. At 11:30 I kill someone. At noon I have lunch. All these things can
3
be...
o'clock, hide the body.
Right.
Yeah, and this is, so obviously it would be nice to just remember an autofill. If you want it to be really, really, really special, you would keep track of those breaks which do occur at the same time and say, oh, Ian's taking a break at 9. It's probably coffee. Pre-fill it with coffee, and then you can always change it. With most of these things, it's going to be the same repetitive tasks over and over again, particularly when it comes to breaks.
And this is what I've noticed about all timekeeping tools, because I've seen a lot of them. The simpler they are, and the less interaction they take, the better they work.
Absolutely.
So, for instance, one of the ultimate timekeeping tools that I saw for software engineering just keeps track of whether you're typing or not.
Nice. Very simple. I built a timekeeping app myself, and it was exactly the same principle. You don't want to have to do much, really. The only thing you want to have to do is say, I'm switching to another task. Yep. And frankly, you don't even necessarily want to say what that task is at the time. You just want to hit one button and be able to move on with actual work, because every time you're having to fill in the timesheet, you're not working.
Exactly.
And sadly, very few companies will let you put timesheet management in your timesheet as a task.
No, that would be...
Which is unfortunate, because there was a couple of jobs where I had to fill out 3 different timesheets at half-hour intervals, so that was fun.
I haven't filled out a timesheet since I was like 22.
Nice. Yeah,
but then again, I never did contract work.
Yeah, you never did contract work
where the big
in the finance industry, where they care a lot.
They do, indeed.
So we're not going to spend too much time on this one, because we've already, I think, given most of the feedback. Yeah. But the key thing I wanted to point out here is that, what do I do if I want to work on a different project? So you've got the Friday Games review coming up later today. I'm going to be producing that as well. How do we set this up so that we can now enter time against a different job?
I assume, is it project? Add that?
It is.
Okay,
so you've discovered it, which is nice. And while we're going through this, what I actually quite like here is that as you're putting through all of the details, you can actually hit this button and it'll figure out the office details for you.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is quite nice. Anything which makes me...
1625 Charleston?
We are, but I'm going to give it that.
Okay.
What it might also be even more useful is to do a geocoding reverse lookup and figure out what businesses are in the nearby vicinity, and let me choose from that.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Chances are I'm more interested in the company than I am in the actual specific location. So I wanted to highlight this. So now see, I guess my problem here is that this navigation, so we are using this appropriately for navigation, but it's not immediately obvious that all of these other things exist, and export and files don't really fit that category. They should kind of probably be in the overflow menu, or something that you can always get to. Yeah. And so you're really only looking at timesheets and projects. And so I would so I'm certainly not endorsing So I'm certainly not endorsing a dashboard pattern, but I think in this instance where you've got this sort of amount of space here on your homepage, effectively, it might be useful to have a way right here of being able to initiate
and that's the thing
new
too,
project.
Is that I see, okay, I've got App Clinic. I dropped that down. I assume that if I had more projects, I would have more things in the drop down. The thing is, when I'm looking at this, that's a natural time for me to be thinking, oh, I need another one. So I wouldn't mind having new
project.
Something in there.
Yeah. So I think it's reasonable to have this here in the navigation, both timesheets and projects. But I think what you want here, because this is the screen,
now
this is your main screen.
Right? What if I just hit the, there's a plus button.
There is a plus button.
It's the wrong plus button.
It is.
It's actually the Bayer-Aspirin button.
It is the Bayer-Aspirin button.
Yeah, it's trademark infringements all over the place. So now I have, add add task. All right, I guess I was in the task view. Is that?
So I think the idea here is that for every project you have tasks. So you may
Okay.
say that you went and bought donuts for the app clinic, and so you
Okay.
would add that task into this project.
That is a task that you consistently fail at.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's just have a quick look. You can add tags. What work? None. Failed at that. Location, feeling pretty sad about it. I'm not quite sure what the feeling is for, but I kind of like it. And there's no way to so there's no description or anything else for this task. It's just basically the description, the summary.
Right.
Hit save. So again, it's not entirely clear what that means. So if we go back here, it seems like I've gone back twice. Go to projects. See, now the navigation is broken. I'm sort of like, wait, I didn't navigate that many parts in, and this task that I just said, where does it live? What does it do? Do I need to have been working in order to create the task? So the way that all the things join together, how do projects and tasks and breaks and work, how does that all fit together? It should be obvious. I shouldn't have to figure it out because, as Ian said, I don't want to have to fill out a timesheet to begin with. I'm only doing this either because my employer requires it or because I need to be able to keep track of who to bill.
Right.
So you want to do as little thinking as possible when it comes to filling in that. So you want to have a really clear flow of navigation through each of those tasks. And I think, as a homepage, this is really nice. And it shows you what you're working on and sort of one click to start, which is great. And so if you can have ways to link to new projects and new tasks as appropriate directly from that, I think you're onto something. And you also, I think, want to simplify this navigation. So once you get into the project side, it all starts to get a little complicated with, so here's the task.
Now, one thing I think could really just turn this into a winner is integration with something in the cloud. Even just a simple, let's say App Engine database.
Absolutely.
Where I could, bring this down as a spreadsheet, edit it in, let's say, Google Docs or your favorite documentation tool, and be able to set some of this stuff up on the computer where I've got a full-size keyboard and I don't mind doing some of this stuff.
Absolutely. So that's something which, when I was experimenting with various Google APIs before I joined Google, it did exactly that. So it actually saved everything straight into Google Calendar. So you could see exactly what task you performed, and then there was a script that ran on a server which parsed the calendar and created a Google Docs spreadsheet, which was the actual timesheet.
That is really cool.
Which was tidy. And I liked that because it meant that I could, record the information on my phone, but then when it came to actually saving it and producing it and printing it out, it was all done, in the cloud. So
nice. See, I've never hooked anything up to my Google Calendar like that because I think it would demonstrate exactly how much of my time is wasted every single day. It's a little depressing, really.
It could be.
Yeah.
So, but
really,
anyway,
it's just these 2 hours a week that I get anything done.
Well, at least you get those 2 hours, and that's
exactly.
important. So yeah, I think that would be the other piece of a functionality device, is definitely hook it up to the cloud somehow. It doesn't need to be through a Google-specific product, but some way to know that what I've entered in here is going to be recorded and saved somewhere, I think is really vital.
Exactly. So,
what else have we got here? Do we want to have a quick look at timesheets on the tablet, see if they've optimized for tablets?
So they say they've got a new design. Okay, so in this case, so I haven't set this up, so it's asking me for a new project, which again will be our mobile Android surgical. All right, and I guess I have a save button here. Okay, so that's actually
that's
much
nice.
more. Although it doesn't
Ian,
have to be.
can you jiggle the HDMI cable a little bit?
Oh yeah, you bet. How's that? Beautiful.
There we go.
All right.
Oh, there you go.
So, but now I'm missing my. I want to. There we go.
So you're going to go back up.
Well, I missed the little coffee cup now.
I do too,
Yeah, I thought that
particularly
was
because you've got all of
nice,
this white space and you don't have the coffee
right?
cup.
And what I really want is I want a big red start working
Yeah,
button.
boom.
Wouldn't that be great?
Absolutely. And maybe even shaped as, usually I don't suggest going away from Android styling, but an actual big button.
Absolutely.
Would be kind of cool.
I would go for that, definitely.
And let's just, if you have a look at...
There's actually a really good one on iStock Photo. It costs like $7. I think you can
I
probably.
think it would be
afford
worth it.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, I think in this particular instance, when you're working on tablet, this is your view, right?
Mhm.
And so I think you almost want to avoid having that entire, this view I think
Yeah.
is much less valuable.
Mhm.
You want to basically start in projects, then use your drop down to be able to navigate between projects. The
Yeah.
same way that Gmail lets you choose labels. So you're always looking at this. And I would, have an extra fragment somewhere in
Right.
this zone.
Now, if I go to tasks here, now one thing okay, so I do have an add new task action. Just this 0 kind of in the middle here is a little confusing to me.
Yeah. Particularly, I
This is
think,
I
because
see, this is
we have
actually a
this
view pager.
this nice style that we saw earlier of the sort of cursively written hints. I think that would be much nicer here. You don't have any tasks. Click the add tasks button to add something. I think would really add.
All right, there we go. Actually, I think I may be a little. Okay, you're right. I'm happy.
You're happy now.
I'm reasonably happy. I don't like mint
Reasonably
martinis
happy.
as much as beer.
Yeah. Well, you'll be happier later then, I guess.
Indeed. Okay, so what did I do?
So now you're viewing the task, and so this is a really interesting
Wait,
example
why
of
am
why
I-
the navigation doesn't quite work.
Right.
Because what you really want is to just have this task view within this fragment scenario. So you basically want to
Yeah.
have this view. So you basically on a tablet you never want to be getting rid of this side, right? That should be your
Yeah.
kind of your control pad. This is
Yeah,
where you choose your
right.
projects. It's where you start working, have your breaks. Everything lives there, and then the detail all comes in on the right hand side.
Yeah.
So I'd say it seems like the tablet layout is relatively new. I would say you're on the right track. Definitely keep going along those lines, but try and come up with more ways to be able to really reduce that navigation flow.
Well,
So
let me
you can do
emphasize
everything
this.
from one
You
place.
are absolutely on the right track. You're doing everything
absolutely.
right. You're not doing anything stupid. There's just a few things you could probably think through how you could reduce the amount of complexity in the app.
Absolutely. Yeah, reduce complexity, reduce the navigation. I think if you stick anyone who knows vaguely, someone who uses timesheets but has no idea about your app, sit them in front of it and just watch them try and figure out how to do things. And every time they click something and then go back and click something else, trying to find it.
In something.
Yeah.
But for finishing it, for adding details, all of these things, maybe it really just needs to be a completely separate flow.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on. While we've still got a few more minutes, I'll squeeze that across.
Yes.
And let's have a look at Invoice to Go, I think.
Okay.
Let's have a quick look at that one. So we're going to have to breeze through the next couple a little more quickly, I think, than we have so far.
Always happens. Always.
It always does. I'm going to zoom in on the phone camera. I can see it happening. It's exciting.
Yes, it's going to happen any minute now.
Boom.
There we go.
Yes. Look at that.
Right.
Nice. So this
Which app is this?
this is Invoice to Go.
Yes.
These is the right one.
And what I think is interesting is that the Invoice to Go action bar.
And
Well,
I'm
now
just
this
confused.
is really, really weird because you'd think that if the title in the action bar is Radioactive Yak, and there is a way to add multiple companies, where you might be switching between companies, it seems like Radioactive Yak should be a drop down
Absolutely.
on the left-hand side, which is of course the.
Yeah. So I'd expect.
So what happens if you add another company?
Let's have a look. Start a new company. New company. So this is the workflow when you begin. So
Right.
this is how you basically go through and decide what the invoice is going to look like for your company.
There
so
really are quite a few nice styles.
quite a lot of nice ones. Let's go with fresh. So we can choose all of our different fields. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. Company name. Let's see. So that'll be for the app clinic. We need to give an address. So again, this would be a nice opportunity to maybe figure that I'm putting in the details where I currently am. Let's have a look here. Do I need all of them? Yes, I do. There.
Oh, but you need 2 address lines.
2 address lines, which is interesting.
The truth is that data validation, when you're enforcing business rules, is important. But I think people take it too far. I think that when you're writing something that's going to be handed off to a data entry clerk, it's nice to have some validation. When you're doing the setup, however, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's my company. I get to decide exactly how it should appear on address forms.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So we're going to skip all of these as well. Minor point: you don't need the EG to prepend each of these. You just have the sample stuff. And in fact, even the phone, cell, fax, etc., isn't kind of the standard way that you do hint text. You want to, you just want to show what they should be putting in there and let them put them in there themselves.
So here you just have phone instead of EG phone. And
Yeah,
phone
or you
number.
would just have the phone number. You just have 555-5555
Really?
as an example.
Okay, I can
That's
see
certainly
that.
what you would do for email and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, this is interesting in that we're not doing any validation on the cell phone numbers. Chances are you're only going to use numbers and maybe dashes, so you want to set the keyboard type appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
You can set our tax rate, sure. And then we're done. So now we're back in MASH. And again, so now if we want to choose a different company, then we go through this. So that's
That seems a little unfortunate.
That's
because I think
confusing.
the action bar navigation pattern is pretty solid.
Absolutely.
People are going to expect that.
I think in this instance, it makes obvious sense. If you have the company name here, you're going to expect that drop down is going to let you choose them.
Exactly.
Particularly as you go into this action bar style very quickly. We'll switch companies. Otherwise, this is kind of a dashboard pattern, which I guess kind of makes sense in this instance in that you're just trying to do these particular things. It doesn't really make sense to drop you into any one of them independently. But I wonder, how does this look on the tablet?
Well, I think they actually have a pretty nice tablet layout. It's unconventional.
So this is
Very
actually quite
unconventional.
different from the phone.
Yeah, it really is. So there's a couple things that I wanted to point out. First, the action bar, of course, is just as useful as it was on the phone, which is to say,
Not particularly.
not as much as I'd like. And then they have this area over here on the left. Now that's really interesting to me. It's unconventional. I don't dislike it. I find it to be useful, but there is actually a pattern which we just added, which is called help me out here, the drawer.
The
pattern.
drawer, absolutely.
Yeah. If you look for the drawer pattern, you've seen variations on this in several apps. The Facebook app had it, the Google Plus app, the YouTube app.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of requests for it to be added to the design pattern. So the design team sat down, looked at all of the variations on this, and sort of tried to figure out which ones were most effective and most like other Android patterns.
Yeah.
And so what we settled on is something where you can slide this in and out. Usually you don't just see icons. Usually you'll see
It's a little
icons
bit
and
more,
text.
yeah.
It should always be under the action bar, never over the top. It never pushes the action bar over.
That's right. Action bar is a first-class citizen. It's always there. It stays at the top of your app consistently.
So in point of fact, I think it was YouTube was actually implementing all of our suggestions.
That's right.
if I recall
And I think
correctly.
all of the examples on the design site use YouTube. So if you're wondering how should it work, how should it look in practice, definitely check out the latest YouTube app.
Indeed. So this is very, very close to the drawer pattern. The drawer pattern is basically saying I have a fairly complicated bit of navigation, more than is really sensible for the drop-down area.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to always necessarily be visible.
Yeah.
I think I would switch to that. Now over here in the main area, we've got the original sort of dashboard idea, and then some extra stuff. I don't hate it, but I can't rationally defend it either.
It does look like, what can we put here to fill up some space?
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the right solution is. I wonder if there are
Well,
shortcuts.
if we go to an invoice, right now I'm kind of bugged by this because now it's using the entire screen, and I kind of would like to still have some,
some navigation.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe even just, and this is all create, right?
Yeah.
Maybe what I would like is to see, so that's my products view, I guess.
Yeah.
Now this is what I want more. Okay, I've got invoices and add invoice.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't want to go to this screen. I want the add invoice activity to be a fragment inside here. I think that makes a ton more sense.
Yeah.
I would like the invoices to be listed over on the left, whereas right now, I think this is more, most
think that's
likely
where it's going to be all of your
list, right?
invoices. Yeah.
And I think that that's really what we've been getting at. Is in general, this is, I would call this like the Windows Explorer or Finder type of view on something, where you've got this sort of folder idea over on the left and then a list view on the right. And that almost never feels right to me.
No, it's not. It's not quite right. Not on a mobile device, on a phone or a tablet, where you don't want to have to navigate. You don't want to have to think about things being sort of in this hierarchical folder structure. There's really no reason why you can't sort of have everything kind of on the left.
Exactly. Especially since they've already gone hierarchical with this. So it wouldn't be that hard to just say, okay, I'm going to open up my invoices and see them listed underneath invoices. And then I could see the invoice details over on the right.
Just have a big plus icon next to each of the categories, so you can add a new an invoice, new estimate, purchase order, etc.
Yeah, I think I would probably prefer that.
Yeah. So again, it's basically the same sort of story that we've been saying all the time, which is to simplify your navigation as much as possible. You don't want to have every time you change the entire screen, you're changing the context in which you're working, which means you need to take a few seconds to figure out what just happened, where am I, what do I have to do. The less you can do that,
this is actually something that they've done cognitive studies where when you change context, it's the habit of your brain to actually forget what you were doing. It's why, and they've shown this, like every time you go through a door, for instance.
I've seen this,
so this is why you go into another room and then ask yourself, why am I here? Now I do that because I'm old, but other people do that because of this cognitive thing.
You walk through,
So yeah, every time you switch something completely, and I think that's really what I'm getting at, right? It's not that I don't like the layout here, it's not that I strongly object, it's just that the fact that to get anything done, to see anything useful, I have to pick something that is going to take me to a completely new area, right? Some of these are worse than others, So to view an invoice, it sort of took me over to the right, where now I've got this list view here. So I don't hate that as much. But to add an invoice,
it's completely new screen.
Yeah, completely new screen.
And definitely not sort of tablet optimized either. For something like this, so that is confusing. Add invoice. So for something like this, where you've got a huge amount of white space. Now obviously once you've got the items that may change, but it may not even be a bad thing here to actually have the white space around the borders rather than in the middle of your screen, because this part here in the middle, this is where you actually are going to be paying attention. That's where the user is going to be looking, but all the important stuff is on the edges.
So I think if I had to choose the most Android-y way to do this, it would probably be to have this left-hand navigation area be expressed as either action bar navigation or as a view pager.
View pager actually would be quite nice, I think, here. So flick between them.
Yeah,
you don't actually need to see them next to each other.
We never even see this. Instead, we always see this view. So we have the view of the master view here. We have a detail view here that's actually a detail view instead of another master view.
Yeah.
And then I could page through either by dropping down or doing some paging here or using the drawer. I mean, there's any number of ways that I could do that.
That would be quite
but I wouldn't waste this kind of space on what's essentially a navigation field.
Yeah, because keep in mind as well that these things don't actually have anything in common. The commonality is that they're all pieces of paper that you have to generate for your business to either charge someone, pay someone, or be paid. But having them listed here sort of implies a hierarchy that doesn't really exist.
Not so much, yeah.
So just having them separated by navigation, or I quite like the idea of having the view pager. So you scroll between your invoices and your estimates. It's not a huge number, so it doesn't become unwieldy or hard to find.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's your call, something to experiment with perhaps, but that's what I'd consider.
All right. Great. So I think we've offered a lot of constructive feedback on apps that we thought were really quite good. There were a few apps that we don't have time to look at in exhaustive detail. Quite honestly, I didn't think that they were quite as good. One of them is Finansisto, which
I struggled with this one. So I opened this up and pretty quickly turned it back off because I really didn't understand what I was supposed to do with it.
I'm not sure. Now, maybe if I was considerably more wealthy, because I did notice that I have the ability to do all sorts of things in this application in any currency I want.
Nice.
Something like 200 built-in currencies, and including special drawing rights, which who has those, right? And I can also use my own made-up currency.
Oh, that's handy.
So with my own symbol and everything. So I made up the Twitter bucks with, of course, the @, as a symbol.
Nice. I was
and that's how
expecting Nee Lewis bucks, but
well, no, I didn't make nearly as much sense. And that, of course, is what I'm paying my minions.
Excellent. Well, that's interesting.
But this kind of surprised me too. Is like I could see that I could add budget items, but as far as I can tell, each budget is partly red and partly green for no apparent reason. Really not understanding that.
It seems like
Maybe
it's just there
that I haven't paid it because I don't have a transaction, maybe? I mean, in other words, this is one of those things where there's obviously a lot of power.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it makes no sense.
Yeah. It fails the, I've just installed this app, how do I get started test. Like, I can't see, when I start this up, I don't see what is the value, what can I do, what is this giving me that some other app hasn't. And so if I've just downloaded a bunch of budgeting apps, then I'm kind of stuck here, because I load it up, and if we switch to the phone view, I haven't put anything into this one yet, so we should be able to fire it up. And this is kind of what you're presented with at startup, and it's the old school model, so it's a gingerbread type tabs and buttons and everything else, which is already a bit off-putting. There's no title bar or action bar, so again, there's no context hint as to what am I doing, how am I supposed to do things, and it just says you should get started by creating an account by hitting the plus, and then title, which doesn't quite make sense because my accounts have titles. I guess it feels like it should be name or description or something.
Well, that's a minor thing.
It is a minor thing, but it goes to the whole flow of being like, I'm not quite sure what they want or what this is for or how this is going to help me. And if you compare that to the other apps we've looked at, it became pretty obvious straight away. Like, oh, okay, so this is for creating invoices. The first thing I do is choose what the invoice looks like, and then you understand right off the bat that, okay, so this is probably going to create invoices for me.
Of course, my major objection to this is just that with the state of things now, I'm much more likely to use something that can hook into my actual bank account because all of my things are done electronically. Yeah. And I think that's why I gravitate towards something like Mint.com.
Yeah. All
right, we're just about out of time. The one app that we didn't really look at was IOU. The truth is, IOU is, I'm going to be honest. I was never a huge fan of Holo. From the beginning, I said to myself, it's interesting that we want to be all like holographic and Tron style, but I don't personally like it. So with that in mind, what I'm about to say may be completely a personal problem, but I find this black screen to be off-putting.
Well, I think, it would be helpful if we had Roman here to confirm, but I think in general we've found that for most sort of data entry things, anything other than media, the Holo Light theme is sort of more visually pleasing with the white backgrounds and the light action bar rather than dark. Dark works well for things like YouTube or for video playing.
There you go.
Anything where the content is front and center and what you're looking at is really important, so you want everything else to sort of fade into the background.
Well, I think we can just say there's a rule of thumb here is if you're going to be using this app while wearing your little black dress, then it should be Holo Dark. And if you're going to be wearing your white shirt and tie, then it should be Holo Light.
Yeah, I think that's something which everyone will find very useful.
Absolutely. Especially those who wear both a shirt and tie and a little black dress. Maybe this
we weren't going to talk about this on air.
Really, yeah.
Moving on.
Really unique. So we don't have time to discuss it more. It does actually seem like it's got some nice functionality, and we might want to cover it more.
We may have another look. Generally speaking, it keeps things simple. It's obvious what it's for. Not overly complicated navigation. So they do a few things right.
Yeah, it's nice that you can.
So it would be nice if that was a view pager, so that you could say it's nice that you can swipe
between them. Right now I'm wondering why can't I swipe between them?
Yeah.
All right. So and that falls into the bucket that we talked about earlier, which is if you make something that looks like a standard Android UI element. If you have to implement your own, if you want to implement your own, bravo to you. You're completely wasting your time. But if you do, make sure that it operates in exactly the same way, because otherwise people will just be frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's like getting into a car and finding out that the brake's on the right and the gas is on the left.
That's not going to end well. So I had a problem. I came over to the US, got in a car, and found the entire steering assembly was on the wrong side of the car.
Yeah, well, that's when you come to a different operating system, let's say, you often
You need to adapt.
But I think you probably will have noticed that every car in the United States drives that way, and so even though it may appear completely wrong, consistency is a virtue.
Absolutely. As they say, adapt or die. In some cases, a little more literally than others.
Indeed. All right, that's all we have time for today, folks. So thank you very much for joining us. Let us know on our Google Plus page what you think of today's show. If you'd like us to, bring back the Hangouts or switch microphones again or anything else, let us know what you think. And until next week, I am Ian Nee Lewis.
I'm Reto Meyer, and we'll see you guys later. We'll see you next week for music players, I think.
I believe it is.
Yeah, music players. That should be a really interesting show. And see you next week.